Nice.
Tim, very good. Yeah, it's a great start. Fantastic start. Tim, thank you so much for coming on here. I do appreciate it, sir.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you inviting me on. Yeah.
Yeah, just starting way back to your beginnings here. Do you remember kind of the catalyst that got you into wanting to start drumming?
Yeah, I do actually. I can thank my older brother for that. I think I was about 10 years old. He started a punk rock band in Boston. And he had a bass player, but he couldn't find a drummer, so he literally just like put sticks in my hand and he was like, "You're playing drums in my punk band." And I didn't really have a choice. Like that's kind of just how I started. So, but it was
Yeah,
cool. We gigged around Boston and we played like basement shows and the All Asia in Boston and all sorts of different spots. So I was grateful that he did that. So,
how
yeah.
old was he and how old were you?
I was 10, 11-ish, and he's 3 years older than me, so he was like 13 or 14. And uh
Okay.
and
So
he was like just writing songs nonstop. He had like a little 4-track recorder that we like recorded with in the basement, and yeah, we worked pretty hard. It was fun. So
that's a good start.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's quite young, but that's good. You guys had the ambition to do that.
Yeah, that was all him. He was really ambitious, and we wrote a lot of music together, put out a lot of albums together, and he doesn't play as much, but he's still, he's doing it a little bit now. So
Yeah. How does he think of you now that you're in all these different projects and music has become a huge part of your
he's
life?
he's really supportive, actually. It's great. We just opened for the Black Crowes by GA-20 in Boston, and my brother came out and watched that, and we hung out and stuff like that, which was a great experience to for him to come out and support me, which was amazing, and just to hang out with him too and watch the Black Crowes together was awesome. So
And you did make him buy a ticket, right? You didn't put him on a list of some sort.
yeah, of course, no, I charged him double for it, but he was okay with it. Yeah,
Gotta support artists. I mean, hey, sorry,
yeah.
man. He should understand. If anybody should understand, it's your brother. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, no, of course he was put on the list. I don't even know how much tickets were to that show. I'm sure they were a lot of money for the Black Crows, but yeah,
I was
it
gonna
was
say for
cool.
GA-20, but it's and Black Crows also have their fans, I guess, as well. Moving
Yeah.
forward, did you end up taking lessons at all, or were you just primarily self-taught?
So initially I would say, the first couple of years I was more self-taught than anything else. But I ended up studying a lot with different drum teachers. Especially in high school, I studied with this guy, Bob Galati in Boston, who is kind of he taught like just tons of people. He used like this thing called the Alan Dawson method. I won't go too deeply into that because that's all drum nerd stuff. But he was a really fantastic drum teacher. He passed away actually about I guess 4 years ago now, which is crazy. Maybe 3 years. But yeah, he was great, and I owe a lot of the way I played to studying with him. And then I went to Hamilton College. I got a degree in music and history there, and then I went to Berkeley for a couple years. So I studied with a lot of drum teachers. Definitely put time into that. So
Very
yeah,
passive, kind of just when you had the chance to, when you had it wasn't like a huge part of your life, I'm assuming.
yeah. When I had a minute or two,
Right,
but
here and there, sure.
no, my early childhood life was basically drums and ice hockey, and that's it. I didn't do anything else. It was just those two.
Those are the cornerstones.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I built my life on when I was a little kid. So
Uh, when you were getting into to drumming, what kind of music were you listening to? Were you like, yeah, that's what I like, and that's what I'm trying to do?
yeah, I mean, the punk rock early on was my shit. I don't know if I can swear on this or not, but yeah,
You
that's
say whatever the heck you want, man.
yeah,
It's yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I
This is
loved
your time, Tim. Use it. Say
nice.
all the words you want.
Yeah, like punk and grunge, and I loved like Rancid, the Dropkick Murphys, you know, heavier, stranger acts like Leftover Crack. That was a band I used to listen to. Yeah, punk and ska and stuff like that. I was really into, and so my drumming back then that's really what I focused on was playing along to those records. And then when I got to high school, they threw me in jazz band, and I was like, "What is this?" All of a sudden they're like, you're playing way too loud. You need to play with dynamics, which was a word I had never heard before in my life, but at that point.
Uh,
But no, that was great. So I mean, through high school, it's like I actually really got into playing jazz, and then on weekends I would be playing like basement punk shows with my brother, and it was kind of this like interesting mix of playing, that I had going on through my teenage years. So it was cool.
right,
Yeah.
that kind of duality between two worlds
Exactly.
there.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
When you kind of when the jazz aspect entered the dynamics, if you will, entered your playing, did that open your mind to new different genres outside of what you were regularly
totally.
playing?
Yeah. Yeah. Then I started getting more into like funk as well. I remember, I think the first time I started listening to that, there's this group called the Crusaders. They had this album called Chain Reaction that came out in the early 70s. And a buddy of mine named Leo, who was a really good bass player, he like showed me that album. And I all of a sudden was like, just kind of went down the rabbit hole with more of the funkier stuff like Tower of Power. And, so I played a lot with those records too. But yeah, it was cool. Definitely getting into jazz and playing. I played in a small combo, which was like four. It was a quartet, and then also the big band at the high school I went to. I went to Rivers in Massachusetts, which there was a jazz conservatory at the high school actually, which is pretty crazy.
Wow,
So
yeah.
I wasn't
Home of the
technically.
Jazz Conservatory, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't technically in the conservatory because I played hockey, and if you played a sport, you couldn't be in it. But I played, in all the jazz bands and stuff like that at Rivers.
You were
So
the
that was
bad
cool.
boy. Yeah, you were kind of the outlier, right?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much.
Underdog.
Yes, yes. So,
So throughout high school and your college experience, are you just getting into different kind of groups and kind of experimenting with music in general during that
yeah,
time period?
yeah, definitely in college at Hamilton, I was in a few different like party bands kind of. One was called Walter Funkite. Another one was called Johnny Fontaine. So we had a lot of fun. We just, literally played college parties. It was mostly like funk, but we also did some covers and then after that I went to Berkeley, and that's where I kind of just locked myself in a basement and practiced for like 3 years straight and didn't really see daylight. So that was definitely the formative years for me working on the instrument, and I got to study with Dave DiCenzo, Jackie Santos, Kim Plainfield, a bunch of really awesome teachers there. So
During that time of locking yourself in a basement, as you say, and in a good way. Let's
yeah,
preference that,
yeah, yeah.
not in a
It
Silence of
was
the
by
Lambs
choice. It
type
was by choice. Yeah.
by choice. Uh, During that time period, did you feel like that was when you really just started interlocking with drums in general, just like really dedicating yourself to this craft?
Yeah, that's definitely the time I did that. And I remember having teachers who really laid it out for me, and they're like, "Listen, if you want to do this for a living, it's like Bob Galati specifically said. He's like, everyone I know who's doing this professionally like went through a period of like 3 or 4 years where they just practiced nonstop, like 5, 6 hours a day. And I took that to heart, and I got super nerdy about it actually. I literally, for like 3 years in a row, I made it's pretty funny. I made a binder that had like every week in it, and I had like a chart, and I would every week of the year for 3 years, I wrote in exactly what I was practicing, and I counted how many hours I was practicing, and then I would add it up at the end of the year. So I got super specific and broke down everything that I thought I needed to get better at, and so it was a good experience. The funny thing is, a lot of the things that I did work on, I don't even really use anymore, but just the process of learning how to practice is almost just as important as the practicing. So
Yeah, look, the binders say that you've been putting in the work, so
exactly
that's
right.
yeah, yeah.
I'll pull them up if you question me.
Yeah, no, 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 and yeah, we'll put up the it's gonna be PDFs later
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
so make sure
perfect.
you check the show notes on that. Uh,
Yes.
during
No
that
one
time,
wants to see that.
I've been messaged by plenty of people, hey, get Tim's binders. And I didn't, I mean, I'm glad it came up naturally that I didn't have to pry about it, which is, good on my part.
Exactly. Yeah.
Spending that amount of time with anything though, I mean, that's really gonna inform your view on it and really get you submerged in. I mean, 5 or 6 hours a day. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it was intense. It was,
yeah.
yeah, it was cool. The funny thing though is like, and I always say this to the students that I teach, is like, you can practice that much and I don't even know if I advocate for practicing 5 to 6 hours a day anymore for people because sometimes I think it can be overkill. But the most important thing is actually getting out there and playing shows. And I learned how to play the instrument by doing that practice, but I learned how to play music by, after that period, just like by being in bands and touring and like playing every night in front of people. That's the most important thing for sure. So,
And make sure you have a basement. These are the key points.
with a lock on it, right?
With a lot, yeah, I mean, you really gotta, if you're gonna do it right. And
Yeah,
that's how you do it right. This
yeah,
is not
exactly.
to give away too many of your teachings here, just a little taste, just a little, yeah.
I'm never going to get a new drum student after this interview.
Might need to censor it, but
Yeah.
so you exit school and immediately are you like, all right, I'm just gonna plunge myself into music outside of school, like that's
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I
that
mean, I didn't even finish Berkeley. I was only there for 2 years. It was too expensive, and but I got a ton out of it. And I started getting gigs while I was at Berkeley, and I started making some money, and that's when I was like, okay, I think it's time to step out of Berkeley. So yeah, early on in those, I was 23, 24. I played in a wedding band, which was good money, but kind of not my favorite experience. Not really why I learned how to play an instrument, but it was fun. I mean, we played all sorts of different styles of music from big band swing to like Katy Perry and in between. So it was cool. And the musicians I met while playing in the wedding band were awesome. So I did that, and then I played in a lot of local bands around Boston. And then I think I was about 20, 25. I moved to LA actually, and I lived there for a couple years as well.
not too
Um,
many basements around those parts.
no, actually, there's none. And that
Yeah.
is something that I learned when when I got out there because I started teaching drum students. And I'm like, yeah, just, parents would ask, like, the drums are really loud. Like, what are we supposed to do? And I'd be like, oh, just put them in the basement. And they're like, we don't have basements here. And then, so they put them in the garage is what they do there. So,
Yeah, the only time I've ever been in a basement was in LA. I said, man, this is just, it's not a West Coast thing at all. And I feel like
no.
especially it's not a Los Angeles thing.
Oh, yeah,
That's
for
for sure.
earthquakes, obviously. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, that's kind of where you want to be during an earthquake. I feel like, just get down to the basement and or a storm cellar kind of a thing, whichever you have.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
best place. It's key.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
gotta lock it. That's again a
Yes.
crucial part because you
I
don't
mean,
want that
that
earthquake coming in.
That is a staple of our conversation is making sure you are
Get that
locked.
key in that lock. Yeah.
Exactly. I really liked LA though. It was not a bad spot. So
So what made you go back and you moved back to Boston, I'm assuming,
yeah,
after
so I was
your
there for two
stint?
years. My girlfriend at the time was going to school there, and she's from actually Orange County as well. She's from Irvine, but so I was out there with her, and I started teaching piano and drums, and then started getting pretty steady gigs out there also. And then she got into school at University of Michigan for medical school, like 2 years into it, and I was like, yeah, like so we ended up moving back to the East Coast, but I enjoyed it. I learned a lot while I was in LA. It was kind of my first, like starting from scratch, not knowing anybody, like having to go to jam sessions, having to advocate for yourself, like get a gig, hold a gig. So it was definitely like firsthand experience learning how to survive as a musician, pretty much
Right.
in an
And
entirely new city. Yeah,
sure, how do you break into that kind of thing? I mean, like you brought the binders and they flip through them and they really make sure that you're on the up and
exactly.
up.
That was on the application for each of those gigs.
Sure,
At least
sure.
at least 3 years of binders.
Rightfully so. And I understand where they're coming from on
Yeah.
that point. Absolutely. So you moved back to was it Michigan or was it Boston that you
So
moved
I
to?
actually moved back to Boston, and I started touring with this singer in Boston named Julie Rhodes. So I kind of got that gig at the same time my partner at the time got into University of Michigan. So I moved to Boston. She was at University of Michigan for medical school for 4 years, and we did long distance as I was touring with this other singer. So, and then that's kind of around the time I also got into GA-20. So yeah, it was busy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So and they're checking binders as well, obviously. They're
Yes,
making
Matt
sure.
and Matt and Pat are very into that stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now Matt has been on this podcast and
Yeah, I saw that.
he seems like a binder checker kind of guy.
Yeah.
Again, understandable. And
Yeah.
if anybody hasn't gone and checked out that interview, please go and check that out after this one.
Yeah, I haven't
After
seen
your
it either. I have to go check that out too, actually.
okay, Tim, you included after you listen to this one, when it's out, go back and listen to the Matt one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, so how did you kind of link up with those guys? Was in Boston as well?
Yep, in Boston, Matt and Pat had started the band, and they were playing with local drummers around. Like a really good friend of mine, actually, Chris Anzalone is the drummer on the first album, Lonely Soul. Um, and I was touring with Julie, but kind of was looking to do something else. And I met them kind of just around Boston at different clubs, and they actually both of them subbed in at various points to play guitar with Julie, and that's how I met them. Um, and they were looking for somebody who like wanted to hit the road like full time, and that was like it aligned perfectly. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm ready to do. I want to like tour. So we hit it off, and the chemistry was really good, and we just since then have been touring basically nonstop.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's so interesting that all these kind of things just line up like
Yeah, yeah.
bookend to another chapter for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Must
It
be
seems like
nice, Tim. Must be very, very nice. Yeah.
that. It's all, yeah. It's been working out okay, that's for sure. And I'm literally, I'm about to start a new one. I think I had mentioned to you, I'm about to move to Denver and got some other things lined up. So, yeah.
You're I like how you're really just trying to try every kind of place in America. That's I mean, you know,
Yeah.
congrats.
It's an adventure, that's for sure.
Right. And the next kind of journey, leg of this journey for you as your life goes on is Hawaii, I believe. After Colorado, it's
Hawaii, I
Hawaii.
think. Yep. I think possibly Japan. We'll see.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just yeah, keep on moving. Yeah, because
Exactly.
you only want to do that plane flight like once. Yeah, totally understand that.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. So.
I cannot wait until the next interview. And you go, yeah, well,
Where
we
will I be? Who knows?
we moved out of Colorado and now we're in Osaka and it's just
Yes.
super nice. Um, had blues music been an influence on your playing before joining GA-20? Was that kind of in your repertoire
It
at
actually
that
was.
time?
It's one of those things. It's funny. For some reason, like blues gigs seem to just like come to me. Like I just, so before GA-20, I played with this band. They're kind of like a little, like a staple in Boston. They're called the Tokyo Tramps. It's a Japanese couple. And they got me in the band, and they're older and they had a ton of experience, and fresh out of Berkeley, they kind of picked me up, and they taught me a lot of, how to play a shuffle, what to listen to. But I definitely learned a ton playing with Matt and Pat. I mean, Matt's been with Charlie Musselwhite for 15 years, so he's a blues dictionary, and he kind of pointed me in the right direction as well. But I had some experience playing blues, and I like to view, like I played a lot of jazz, which is swing, and I played a lot of rock. And in my opinion, blues is kind of just it's a little bit of a combination of that. You're swinging the whole time, but you have a backbeat as well. So
That might be the most controversial viewpoint that's ever been on this podcast. Okay. Oh well, I'll turn off the comments on this one.
all right,
Yeah,
good.
people
Yeah,
are going to be
please.
coming at you. No, I think that's a very valid
They're gonna light me up.
Yeah, again, rightfully so. Binder checkers, these kind of people,
Hmm.
look, people have
Gotta be
jobs to
careful.
do. Yeah, I mean, it's a slippery slope around here.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
did you initially kind of cross paths with Jimmy James and Adam Scone during your time in GA-20? Was that kind of the initial opening of the
Yeah,
doors for you to meet these people? And I feel like it's kind of certain bands always travel in the same kind of circles, and that
totally.
seems like there's like a Venn diagram of like just like the coal mine musicians and these
Exactly.
kind
That's
of
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say is that, through coal mine, I knew about Jimmy James, and the first time I met him, actually, GA-20 was playing in Syracuse, and Delvon Lamar Organ Trio turned out that same night was playing at a venue right down the street from us. So we all like hung out and hit it off, and that was the first time I met Jimmy. And obviously, I've been a fan of his playing for a long time. He's ridiculous. He's a monster. And it turns out he's also a fantastic human being, so that's a nice thing. He's just like the sweetest guy in the world.
Also a
Uh,
plus, sure.
yeah, yeah, it is, especially when you're on the road with people. It makes a difference. So,
I think that you might have a point there. Yeah, I think that
yeah,
there's some
yeah,
validity to that.
yeah. And then, so I knew of Jimmy for a while, and Adam Scone. I've been a fan of his as well because he's like deep into that 60s soul jazz organ style. He played, like Big John Patton and Jimmy Smith and brother Jack McDuff. I really got into that stuff actually over COVID. I was just listening to a lot of those records, and he's one of the only guys around I think who really nails that thing.
Yeah,
Um,
with his
so
with the Hammond, and again, I got to take this time. Please go listen to the Adam Scone interview, which Tim, I know you listened to that one
I didn't know.
because you commented. You said this one's the
I didn't
best
even know
one.
there's an Adam Scone interview
Oh
too.
yeah, oh yeah,
Oh man.
yeah.
I knew there was a Matt Stubbs one, but yeah, all right, I got some listening to do after this then.
We're gonna end it here. We're gonna come
Yeah,
back
right.
in about 2 hours when Tim has
Yeah.
done his research. I didn't see it in the binder though that you did listen to it, so it's fine. It's if there was a
Nice.
doctored kind of document there, that would have been another
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah, but please go and check that out. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Oh, he's amazing. He's also a great guy. So that project kind of I can go into the backstory of how that whole thing came together. It's kind of funny. So I have this thing called Carman Trio, which is an organ trio that I put out 2 records, and both of those records I actually sent to Terry at Coal Mine to see if he would put them out, and he was like, "Yeah, these are cool. Like I like them. It's just not really like sonically in my wheelhouse because Terry has very specific tastes in the way records sound, which I respect the hell out of that. So we always had after that like the conversation of maybe doing an organ trio record at his studio and having him produce it. And then one day, I guess like early last year, I just thought of the idea of putting together a trio with myself and Adam and Jimmy. I thought it would be an interesting mix of people. So I hit Terry up and I was like, "What do you think of that?" And he loved the idea and was like, "Yeah, well, let's make it happen." And just invited the 3 of us to the studio, and that's basically how the whole thing started. So yeah,
So thank you to Terry because it wouldn't have happened otherwise.
it would not have happened without Terry. No,
Yeah, and Coal Mine Records.
I'm so grateful to be putting music out with them because the entire team there is fantastic. Like they're all so cool and supportive, and yeah, it's a great family there. I love that place. So
So many great records.
yep, yeah.
Great records. I mean, great artists associated with the label, of course, as well. But like the amount of fantastic music that's
Hmm.
coming out of that label is just insane.
Yeah. And now Terry, I mean, Terry was the one who recorded and mixed and produced the Parlor Greens album. And he's just starting to do that a lot more he's got a studio in the basement of his house. And he's
And I
killing
mean,
it.
and that's where
That's
you just lock in
exactly,
locationally. Yeah.
exactly. It's actually, I only record in basements. That's the new, yeah, I have to be down there. I didn't even think of that. That's hilarious.
Look, there's a creative process, and
Yes.
that's just what it is.
That's
Yeah.
probably why that record went so smoothly. I was just in my in my element. Yeah.
Right.
And
In an
Jimmy and
attic,
Adam are,
it wouldn't have gone
no,
down like that.
no,
Not
no.
at all. Yeah.
They would have been good, Jimmy and Adam, but the drumming would have sucked.
You know, everyone's got their spots, and
Yeah.
so thank you to Terry for allowing the basement, and
Hmm.
coal mine, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this so you just kind of, did you cold call them with this idea, Adam and Jimmy, about like, hey, let's get together and jam, or was that kind of always like, oh, hey, we gotta do something together, or at
No,
least
I
have a
mean, so
session?
Terry knows them both pretty well. So when I brought the idea up to Terry, Terry was like, "I'll reach out to them," and it was kind of like well, and Terry knows Jimmy really well because of Delvon Lamar, Organ Trio, and Scone also has records out with Coal Mine too. So it was just kind of like a perfect little combination of musicians in the coal mine world. So.
I would say so. Yeah. I think
And the
that's a
timing,
great
again, everything
trio.
is timing. Like the timing there was perfect. Like Jimmy was doing the True Loves, but was no longer with Delvon. And Adam had kind of been looking for something else to get into as well. So it just lined up perfectly, which was
Yeah.
great. So,
Uh, I think that Jimmy's playing on that the Delvin Lamar trio on the I think it's a KEXP performance. I don't
yeah,
know
yeah,
if
yeah,
you've
yeah.
seen this.
Yeah.
Man, the warm-up set especially is just, I mean, they're going into it and they're just so locked in, and anybody who hasn't checked that out, go ahead and do yourself a favor and go listen to that, because that's
Oh,
just
yeah. It's
amazing.
killing. Yeah. And
Yeah,
Jimmy's the group, the True Loves, are also fantastic. I definitely recommend checking them out.
very
So,
cool.
yeah.
And Adam has that tremendous little kind of short film thing about playing at that bar, the Max Club Deuce, I believe is what it's called, in Miami. And it's on YouTube, but it's also an amazing little piece of,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
yeah,
And his band, the
music.
Scone Cash Players, are killer.
Yeah.
Love them.
What was that one? Blast Furnace, I think, is the name of that
Yeah.
album. Yeah.
Something Blast Furnace. Yeah. And that's out on Coal Mine also.
Do you remember the first time getting together with Jimmy and Adam and jamming, or was that like when you started laying down music for
No,
Parlor Greens?
that's a good question. Literally the first time the three of us played music together is West Memphis, that single. That's the first thing we did.
Wow. So
We,
it kind
me,
of took you some time to get into making some stuff, huh?
yeah, it was like we had all gotten into Loveland, Ohio. We were in Terry's basement, had a few drinks, and Terry just like turned on the tape machine and we sat down, and I think Scone started playing it, that little thing, and then I just kind of sat into the groove. And I think Jimmy actually was in the other room and he heard us messing around and like just came in and then just started playing, and we just like took off and did it. So we were like, oh, this is gonna work. We're gonna have some fun.
And yeah, we'll be kind of halfway through just the whole album in like, I don't know,
Yeah,
hour and a half. So just
yeah, yeah. It went pretty quickly. I think we recorded for 3 days and we wrote, and yeah, we wrote the album in those days. So we didn't really plan beforehand. So
that's wow, that's something, man.
it was cool. We'd wake up, Terry had sausage breakfast sandwiches ready for us, eat, drink some coffee, and then we just got right into the studio. So
He knew you needed the fuel, so
exactly.
it's, yeah.
Yes.
That's that's amazing. Did you feel like going into uh Parlor Greens that it was going to be different, like the music that you're going to make with Adam and Jimmy was going to be different than what you had been making with GA-20 in some of a sense, or?
Definitely. Yeah, I knew it was going to be different. I, I like I had mentioned, I've been really into the soul jazz thing, like the '60s soul jazz, which is organ trios, with Grant Green on guitar a lot of times, like groups like Big John Patton, Brother Jack McDuff, Lou Donaldson, stuff like that. And Scone is really into that stuff also. So me and him are kind of on that page, but Jimmy brings a different element into the mix. And that was the cool thing with it, like going into it, I'm like, I wasn't really sure what it was going to sound like. I knew Scone and I were going to lean into that, and Jimmy was just going to do what Jimmy does, which is always incredible. And I think it's an interesting mix, and I think it's cool to hear what people are saying that we said, people are like, you sound like the Meters or you sound like Booker T. And I mean, we're just getting all sorts of different, you know, I guess comparisons, which I think that was at the end of the day, the goal was just to bring all of these elements into one thing and seeing what happens. So
Right. And I saw somebody comment, it sounds like Rancid. I said, huh,
they can hear the influence. Yeah.
on further inspection, right? And
That drum part really reminds me of Leftover Crack.
right, yeah. And it's kind of hard to find the umlau when you're typing that out.
It's
At
true.
least for me because I put that comment in there. Nevertheless, when you're kind of playing with people, and kind of just seeing where they're coming from musically, is that an indication of where to go further? Like whatever they're pulling out, like early on, you go, okay, like this is kind of like their wheelhouse. Let me adapt to that. Or
That's a good question.
thank you.
To be on, to be honest with you, I adapt a little bit to their wheelhouse, but at this point, I have my thing that I do, and I feel like I do my thing, and they do their thing, and we make it work together. So no, I wouldn't say I changed that much. That's the cool thing about getting, further along in your careers. You really do start to develop like your personality on the instrument, and you know that that's what you're going to bring to that particular session. And if somebody hires you, that's what they want you to do is bring your personality. So I wouldn't say I change what I do too much when I play with other people. I maybe modify it slightly, but I make sure that what I'm doing is what I do on the instrument. So
What you're
that makes
known for. Yeah,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
But it is a funny
I'm with
thing
you.
because, we played a gig in New York City, Parlor Greens. It was our first show, and it was like a secret, like industry event. We just kind of wanted to get a show under our belts. And a bunch of people came up to me and they were like, "Man, I didn't know you could play like that. Like play the more soul jazz type stuff." Because they'd seen me with GA-20, which is a lot heavier and louder and part of me was like, really? I've been doing this for a long time, like, because I had the Carman Trio, so I was a little surprised. But I guess you never really know what people think about how you play. So
Right. Do you feel like there is some similarities between the what you were doing in GA-20 and what you're doing in Parlor Greens? I mean, I know it's kind of genres kind of switched a little bit, but is there some overlap between the two?
yeah, no, I definitely think there is. I mean, my approach in GA-20 is the same as my approach to everything, which is like I always try to go for more of like a traditional sound on the instrument, like a 60s, you know, pocket sound. So I like tuning my drums up a little bit. I love playing things that swing and that have a shuffle, and both of those overlap with Parlor Greens and GA-20. I guess really the main difference is GA-20 is heavier. Like I'm playing a lot of rim shots. I'm playing at pretty loud volumes. And when we recorded the Parlor Greens album, we played super quiet. Like I was barely touching the drums. So that's the main difference. And then also you have, I was playing a lot of like Idris Muhammad inspired grooves, like Boogaloo beats and stuff like that. We don't really do that in GA-20, but I'd say the overlapping thing from both of them is like highly influenced by like 60s drumming.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just dawns on me now that there still isn't a bass player within these two groups, and I feel like that's just a choice that you have made, and I respect it. I'm just saying though, it's just like
It's become like a
there's never a
running joke. Yeah,
picture with you even and a bass player at all. I don't think
right?
that,
No.
yeah, which is
No,
yeah,
I just played a gig with Pat recently, and there was a bass player on it named Mark Arabian, who's like he lives in Rhode Island. He's great, great guy, great bass player. And he was joking with me. He's like, "Man, this is like the first time you've played with a bass player in years, huh? You never play with us." Like, so I love playing with bass players. There's nothing wrong with bass players. It's
but you did take offense to that comment that he
yeah, and I'm
said,
never playing with him again because of that. But no.
and then you say this is why I have a bad taste in my mouth because of these kind of interactions.
Exactly.
Do you prefer to play in a trio? Is that kind of the number that you like to play with? Just a three piece?
Yeah, that's that's another thing I haven't really thought about, but it does seem like I mostly play in trios. And yeah, I guess I do enjoy that setting because there's a lot of space for each person to bring out their personality in, I guess you could say. Whereas if you're in a larger group, um, especially as a drummer, a lot of times it's more of like a supportive role, which no matter what, as a drummer, that's what you're doing. But I think
Mhm.
if there's a trio, like I said, you have more space to interact, and I like that a lot. So,
Right. Now aside from GA-20 and Parlor Greens, and we kind of alluded to this earlier that you have your own trio, Tim Carman
yep.
Trio, and was your other band Tim Carman and the Street 45s, is that also a trio?
No, that's actually a full band.
Okay. Like in
Yeah,
that was a full orchestral kind of
yeah, yeah.
piece as
So,
well. Or
yep, yep.
14 piece orchestra, these kind of things.
Yeah, we had an orchestra. Yep, a string section. Yeah, no.
Very
But yeah,
elaborate.
that was a bigger band, and I haven't done anything with that in a little while. That was my first like foray into like leading a band and doing my own project, which was really a cool experience. And as someone who's been a sideman, my whole life, it's interesting to switch, sit in the driver's seat and see what it's like to lead a band. So I like doing both.
Yeah, does it feel vastly different can kind of constructing a group rather than kind of just naturally becoming a part of one that has already been established?
Yeah, it's definitely different, and I think both have their benefits. That's the cool thing about Parlor Greens is all three of us are equal partners in that group, and it's nice. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone's in the driver's seat together, sort of, which is, I think, a little bit rare. So I like it. I like it. I think it's a good combination. Yeah.
I'm glad you went on record saying that you like it. I think that that's everyone was
People have been
wondering.
asking. Yeah.
Again, my box is flooded. Hey, does he like it? I said, I'll get to it. No, that's amazing. Now on top of this, you are also or you have done some session drumming as well
hmm
in the
Yep.
past.
Yep.
Could you describe what a session drummer does, for the
Uh,
folks that may not know?
essen- yeah, essentially an artist who has music ready to be recorded will call you and hire you to come into the studio and play drums on their record. In a lot of ways, like with the GA-20 stuff, I was treated like a session musician. They basically hired me to play drums on the albums. Um, so yeah, I love doing that. If anyone's out there listening wants to hire me to play drums on their record, hit me up. So it's always a good time. Besides the basement, I think my favorite place to be is the studio. So
Preferably a
especially
studio in a basement. That's
preferably a studio. Exactly. No, I love recording. It's definitely one of my favorite things to do. Yeah.
Do you usually know what kind of music you're going to be making before you head into a studio for a session gig?
Usually they'll send you demos and stuff beforehand, which is great and very helpful. But I've been in situations where it's like maybe the drummer who is supposed to do it can't make it and it's tomorrow and they're like, just show up. And you just show up and you're like, all right, what do you need? So I've done both of those things, but preferably it's nice to have the demo so you
I
can
I was
think
gonna
about
ask, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Think about it a bit, go in a little bit prepared, make it easy for everyone, you know. So
Are you always working with different people when it's a group that you're not really involved with, and it's just kind of like a one-off sort of situation? Are you usually dealing with different people during those one-offs, or are there sometimes that other people come in that you go, hey, we worked on such and such together, or is that ever a conversation?
um yeah, there's usually some overlap. It's such a small community. It's like if I haven't worked directly with somebody like before, I know who they are already because they like played with a friend of mine or something. So there's usually a lot of overlap in that sense, I'd say. So
I feel like there would be. I'm just letting you know. I was expecting that. Something along those lines of that answer. And I appreciate you. Um, have you worked on songs that really aren't genres that you're really listening to that often or are really into listening to in general?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, like I listen to so much different stuff. Like I did a country session a year or two ago, and I don't listen to a ton of country, but I do listen to country enough that I kind of have an idea of what to do. But no, there's really never been like huge curveballs thrown at me in terms of like styles. Because I like my favorite stuff to listen to like right now is like singer-songwriter, like Americana, like Jason Isbell and Brent Cobb, and I mean, John Prine. I've been going down the black hole with him. Just like really good songwriters. It's kind of what I've been into. And then, so whenever someone like that hires me, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Like I like playing stuff like this, and I don't get to do that often. So, and then obviously I listen to a lot of jazz, and a lot of blues and punk rock. So yeah, I guess there isn't a lot that I am opposed to doing. I like playing a lot of different styles. So
And you can't be stumped, is what you're saying. So
no,
anybody
you know
who's
what? There is
trying,
one thing that I can be stuck. Anything involving a double bass drum, do not ask me to do it because I have two left feet. I cannot do double bass.
well, I mean, one is for the hi-hat, and that's just those are the rules.
Exactly. You don't break the rules. Those are the rules.
Right, right. Understandable on that part. Uh, do you typically only play the song when you're recording it and like that's it? Like you'll hash it out at that point and then it's like that's it. The song's done and you're stepping away from it?
Pretty much. I mean, if they're hiring me for a session, yes, that's the case. The funny thing with Parlor Greens, though, is that's what happened is we ended up recording that entire album, and then none of us ever played the music again until last week when we had to play a show. So we had to we all had to relearn what we had done on the session, which is kind of always a funny thing to do.
Well,
Go
it's
back
good.
and
It's
listen.
good to have some
Yeah,
separation from it, detach
yeah,
from
yeah,
it completely, and then come back and
yeah,
say, "Well, how did we
exactly.
do that?"
The show was a blast. I mean, we kind of just jumped right back into what we were doing in the studio, and yeah, it was good. So I was a little worried about it. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to pull it off, but it was fun time. So
And what I mean, does it always feel different playing in a studio and playing
oh
uh
yeah,
live?
live,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Especially with the way we did that Parlor Greens record. Like I mentioned earlier, we recorded at a pretty low volume. So I was playing very light, and we weren't, we were playing dynamically, obviously, but it wasn't like, we were playing a rock club in New York City last week. It's like you can't really play at that low volume the whole time. There's a different vibe you have to bring to the equation. So I think you just have to judge every room a little differently and adjust accordingly. So.
Right. How long does it take you to kind of get a vibe on a room that you're playing or a hall of some sort or wherever it may
I
be?
think literally you walk into the room and you're like, this is a big room. This is a rock club. Like I know what we're gonna have to do. But then if you go into a smaller room where it's seated and it's like it has more of a jazz cocktail vibe to it, it's like you're gonna play a little differently. Even with GA-20, that happens all the time. We're super loud, but there are places that we play and we're like, okay, we're gonna have to tone it down a little bit. Maybe not have 4 amps on stage, maybe just two.
I
So,
would have said three. I would have started with three, and if it didn't work, then
well, they both have the same number of amps, so it's either gonna be they each have two, so there's four total, or they're each gonna have one. Usually, there's 4 amps on stage, though. We don't really get out of that too often. So,
four Marshall stacks.
yeah,
Wow.
they could get into it more than I can. There's basements and all
No,
sorts of uh, all sorts of guitar lingo that I've just learned how to just block out.
you go, hey, this is not what I'm trying to
Yeah,
focus on here. This
I
is not I looked through the binders, there's nothing on
there's
amps in here.
nothing in there exactly. I didn't
Nothing at
spend one
all.
day on that stuff. No, I wear ear protection, and it's to block out the loud guitars, but also the guitar talk.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And but the kind of middle ground between you guys is the bass. Talk about the bass, or talking about how you don't like basses.
Yeah, exactly. We all agreed on that. That's how the band started. We all
Right.
sat around, we were ripping on bass players, and we said, okay, let's put a band together around this. So,
There has to be a jumping off point. Um, and that's just the way that works.
yeah, exactly.
Uh, have you ever played a set with a musician that you've just gone into the studio and as a session drummer, and
Oh, yeah.
then
Yeah.
how is that? What is that experience like? Like, oh, I remember kind of playing this song, but I don't know their whole discography, or what's that kind of process?
I mean, that's kind of how it happened with GA-20. They kind of were familiar with my playing style, but I sort of had to audition for that, I'd say. Um, the wedding band I played in, I had to do that. Um, I'm not sure if that's answering your question, but I think that's what you're asking.
I think it's good enough is what
All
it
right.
is.
Yeah.
Um, do you do anything to prepare for a show or going into to record something?
No, I used to warm up, to be honest with you, but I don't do that anymore. Thankfully, shout out to this guy Bruce Becker, who's this drum teacher in LA. He kind of like taught me how to loosen up everything that I do. So no, I don't really warm up. I mean, if it's a gig that I've never played the music, I definitely prepare a lot to, if I have a chance to, I'll make sure I know what the music is. But no, I kind of just like showing up and being in a good headspace and just letting things happen.
When you
Yeah.
show up, are you showing up excited or nervous or something like
Usually
that?
pissed off and tired. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
always try to show up with a good attitude. I mean, at the like, yes, it's playing music and it's fun and stuff, but this is a profession, so you have to treat it like that. And I grew up, my dad's a plumber. He runs a plumbing company. I grew up working with him, and he's a hard ass, So, like he fired me when I was in high school because I showed up late to work, that type of thing. So, but
Because
he,
you were because you were fucking around. Yeah.
I
Okay.
went to see Tool the night before. I was hungover. But
See, now I'm with your father on this one. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly.
this kind of attitude that you're bringing into the
Awful.
workspace. Yeah,
Terrible.
just
No, but he
not.
like instilled in me like, an understanding that if you're getting paid to do something, it's a job. Like you show up on time, you have a good attitude, and yeah. So that's definitely what I try to do.
I think Tool also has a song about that, but I'm not quite sure what it is.
It's on Anima, it's on that album. Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Bingo. How do you feel once a recording session is over or a gig is done? When you're finally done with that
Yeah.
kind of working for the
It's
night?
like you get like a high from it. I definitely would say. It's definitely like it's hard to come down after playing a show. And I've like heard a lot of other musicians say this too. You play a show, there's a certain like level you reach, there's almost like a high, and then you pack up and you go back to your hotel room, and it can be tough to just like go to sleep because you're still kind of pumped up from it. Um, and then in terms of recording, like I my favorite thing is that moment, you do a recording session and then you get the mixes sent to you and then you can listen to it. Like that experience is, I'm like, this is why I play music. This is why I play drums, because it's such a rewarding experience just to like first time listening to what you did. Hopefully it's good because if it's not, then it's not very rewarding. But when it is, it's like, oh man, this is, it just validates why you're doing everything, why you put the time into practice and why you drive all over the place and just spend money on gear, and it makes it worth it once you hear that. So,
I like that answer. I think that's a very solid answer, Tim.
all right, cool.
That was a good one. Um,
That will make the cut, right?
that I
The
think that
rest of the interview we're erasing.
about I don't know, minute 20 so far, which is pretty dang good.
People have short attention spans, so that's great.
What did you my kind of drifted there for 1 second. Uh kind of switching gears here for a minute. When did you start writing? When did writing kind of start to enter your life?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been trying to write like on the side for many years. I'm still terrible at it. No, I mean, So there's two aspects of the writing for me. It's like if I'm writing instrumental stuff for like the organ trio, and I did a little bit of that for my Carman Trio album. And the process that I usually use for that is I'll sing melodies into my voice memos and then take it to a piano and try to figure it out, or take it to the organ player I'm working with and we try to figure it out together. But one thing that I've been doing a lot of recently is I've actually been writing a lot of lyrics. Um, and I have something that's coming out next year that no one knows about yet, but there'll be something about that soon. But it's my first foray into writing like lyrics, and I'm excited about it. So
Yeah, that seems like a major uh maybe not major, maybe that's the wrong term.
well, when you hear
Super
all the
the biggest thing in the world that you've done. No, I kind of
well, when you hear the jokes about what does a drummer get on his SATs, drool, usually they wouldn't expect a drummer to be able to write lyrics, but
tell what about the fucking Don Henley, I think is
uh-huh.
right
Yep.
from the
Yep.
Eagles. That's the
Exactly.
drummer, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Don Henley's one of my favorites. Levon Helm, though I don't think he wrote a lot of the lyrics, but he sang incredibly.
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was in the band. The
Yeah.
like
The
the
band. The band.
that was it. That's the
That was
band.
the one.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Stan Lynch from Tom Petty's band, he wrote a lot of lyrics too. And then you have Neil Peart, obviously he was the lyricist for Rush. Not that I'm not a huge Rush fan, but he wrote the lyrics.
So that's outside the wheelhouse. That's where it ends.
Yeah, you don't ask me to play anything like that. I mean, the guy was a genius.
Aside from writing lyrics though, you've also wrote a couple of books
Hmm.
on music pertaining to that. What kind of inspired you to get into that realm of writing?
Um, s- well, the first book that I ever put out was a kids drumming book called Shape Beats for Kids. And the way that came about, I was teaching. So there's this famous drum teacher named Gary Chafee, and he lives in Boston. And I had been studying with him, and he was like, my grandkid wants to take lessons, but he's like 6. I don't know what to do with him because this Gary was only teaching like more advanced players. So he was like, I know you teach kids. Why don't you come over and teach my grandkid? So I went over his place, and I use this method where I use shapes to show what drums people play. Like a triangle is the hi-hat, a square is a snare drum, and a circle is the bass drum. And if you put two shapes on top of each other, it means you play them at the same time. And Gary saw this method I was using and set the whole thing up. He was like, "You should put a book out," and he hooked me up with Alfred Music, and that's how that first one came out.
That's
And
such a good way, just real quick, that's such a good way of explaining the concept in its a very simplistic form. That's
yeah,
amazing.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just noticed that kids, parents would bring in like 4-year-olds and be like, teach him how to play drums. And I'm like, well, a 4-year-old doesn't know how to read 5 lines of music like a staff. But they know what a triangle is. So I mean, we're gonna use that. It was funny. Like I would have his grandson playing along with Billie Jean, like that Michael Jackson song, and Gary Chafee taught J.R. Robinson, who's the drummer who played on Billie Jean. So I'm literally in Gary Chafee's basement. Like I was nervous as hell because he's an intense guy too. But it was just like one of those moments. Like this is just surreal.
So the kids book was the first kind of foray into
Yeah.
into writing.
Yep. And then from there, I kind of met the Hudson Music guys through Alfred Music, and I started writing. I have a book about Philly Joe Jones. I have a book about Roy Haynes. I have another book called Groove Systems. I went through as you can tell from my binders and stuff like that, I'm a bit of a nerd. So, like
I don't think documenting really, I don't see the line between the two. Yeah.
so like, yeah, literally like my time off from the road, um, I would just spend writing. So yeah, that's what but I've been taking a break from it. I'm starting to realize there's other things in life that I should be doing. So that's why I'm excited about moving to Denver. I'm going to start like hiking and doing like play hockey again, do some different things.
Okay, cool. I was hoping that you were gonna like kind of let me in on what other things there is to do because I'm kind of at a loss as well. But once you start
Yeah.
figuring stuff out, please let me know and I'll have you
Yeah,
back
I'll
on.
I'll
And
hit you up. I'll invite you out to Denver. We can figure it out together.
perfect. Okay, sounds good. All right.
Yeah.
Just as long as somebody else is going through this as well, it's
Right?
okay.
Yeah.
Was the first uh was it the Haynesism or was it the Phillyism that came
Haynesism was the
first?
first one. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And was do you kind of look at that as part of the same series, if you will,
The
the
ism
isms?
series, yeah, yeah. That's based on this concept. You know that famous Bruce Lee quote. It's like, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." So the whole point of the series was to study one drummer. I'm kind of sticking in the jazz world, so Roy Haynes was the first one, and figure out like kind of what their one kick was that they like to use. And usually these musicians like have, I mean, they have more than one idea, obviously, but they have like like just so much control over this one concept that they can adapt and vary it in all different time signatures and subdivisions. And so like just transcribing and digging in, figuring out what it is, and then figuring out how they vary it. And then I kind of just create a book around that concept. Because in my opinion, one of the hardest, probably the most difficult thing that I struggle with drumming is soloing in like a jazz setting and just knowing what to play. And there's so much stuff out there. So I thought it'd be helpful to, focus on one thing and get really good at it, just like a lot of these famous drummers did. And then at the end of the day, the goal is to absorb that piece of vocabulary and make it your own somehow. So,
Hone in on this thing and
yeah,
expand on it yourself.
exactly. Yeah. So that's what the whole series is about, pretty much.
Did you know after writing the first ism that there was going to be a subsequent one? That it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
I mean,
this is
I,
gonna.
I kind of pitched the idea to Rob Wallace and Joe Bergamini at Hudson Music as a series, and they liked the concept. So that was the idea from the beginning. And I started working on the next one, but like I said, I've kind of put it aside for a little bit so I can do non-drumming things a little, and but I know what the next one is going to be. So
And it's another ism just to give little a taste of it.
it's another ism, yes.
Very nice.
Basementism.
How do you feel when something like that is completed? When a book that you've been kind of constructing is completed?
Good. Yeah, I feel good about it. There's something for me that's more nerve-wracking though about releasing books out there, um, because it's like it's just your name on it, and then you see people on like Amazon or people who review this stuff, and there's just more like criticism I think that comes. So it is it's nerve-wracking, but it's exciting, and it's just like anything. It's like cool to see the final product created, and I love hearing from drummers too who will message me and be like, "This is awesome! Like this has helped me so much." I'm like, "That's perfect. That's all I need to know. That it's working for somebody." So so I like that. But then you get like there's an Amazon review of my Haynesism book, and it's literally like, I can't believe this book is about one concept. Like I ordered it and it came and the whole book is about one thing. I'm like, that's the point of the book. Like if you read anything about the book before getting it, you would have known that, but so you have people like that.
I'm very glad that we're getting it out of the way now. That
Yeah.
you are on record saying this. It's just about one concept.
Yes.
That's
It's about
important.
one piece of vocabulary. Literally, that's the whole. I just thought it was hilarious. Why would you order the book then? Yeah. And he even claimed, he's like, the author changed the title or something like that after I ordered it. I'm like, what? Like, people are crazy.
Look, I was a little bit upset that day, okay? I was a little bit revved up
Yeah,
and I
right,
didn't
exactly.
um I never even thought about that. It's like, yes, this is a new format that you're doing, that you're writing a book about music, which is in your wheelhouse, but then you're kind of moving into a different medium. But I forgot about like the criticism is on another level too. That's something
Oh,
else that
yeah.
didn't even enter my mind until you just mentioned that.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I'll say this too, writing about people like Philly Joe Jones and Roy Haynes, who are, I mean, they're just legends, and it's just like it's kind of a scary thing to approach. And I got invited on a podcast to like talk about Philly Joe Jones, and before going on it, I'm like, I'll talk about my book and like my experience studying Philly Joe Jones, but I'm not an expert on Philly Joe Jones. Like, I'm not going to sit here and like
I
be
didn't
able
write
to.
the book on it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wrote the book about one piece of his vocabulary, you know what I mean? But like that, there's just so many people who I look up to, who like teachers who would do a better job at talking about the person Philly Joe Jones, and I just don't want to pretend like I'm you know, the Philly Joe Jones guy, because I'm not, and I would never pretend like I am. So,
I would really like you to now create a biography on the man, and then so you
right?
just slowly become like I wasn't at one point, but now I definitely am certified.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am the Philly Jones guy. So
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Next time we talk, then when I'm in Japan, I'll be the uh, I'll be the Philly Joe Jones guy.
little change of pace, change of scenery, different
Exactly.
kind of book, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
different chapters require different kind of settings and these kind of things, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, when you finish a book, when it's finally all done and it's edited and it's, everything's good to go, does it kind of feel like when you're done recording an album or put like piecing together a song or something, is that kind of like the same feeling that you're getting when it's finally out and released?
It's similar. Um, put it like I'll be honest with you, putting a book out is so much freaking work, because we also, I mean, the editing process, I do all of the formatting and the layout, and then we have to film video and include all of that with the book. It's just such a lengthy process that once I put the book out, I honestly don't even want to look at the thing for like months because I've just looked at it so much. Whereas when I put music out, I love listening to recordings that like the day it comes out, I want to hear how it sounds, like on Spotify or Apple Music, because it's the first time I'm hearing it on that platform. So I'm like, yeah, this is exciting. But with the book, I'm like, I don't want to look at this thing. So I'd say that's the difference. Until, months later, I'll be like, okay, now I'm ready to work out of this thing that I made, and, stuff like that. But the process of putting a book out it's it's tedious, it's fun, but it's a lot of work. So, not that an album isn't also, but there's other people, like a lot of other people helping you in that process, and you're in a band too, so there's other musicians who are involved. But with a book, it's like that's your baby pretty much. So,
Right. So it kind
yeah.
of takes a second to revisit it, if you will, and
Yeah.
kind of accept it for being not just something that you're working on, but something that everybody can comment on. And, maybe something happens, you got to change the title of it. These things occur.
Exactly. You put the book out and then you realize, oh no, this book is only about one thing. I got to change the name of the book to make sure they know that.
What did that feel like? Kind of just under just when that sunk in, you go, oh shit. The thing that I
What have I done?
oh the thing that I wrote about is actually out and it's about the thing. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, exactly.
We kind of touched upon this 5 or so hours ago now. That you're also teaching music as well. Um, that's also kind of a staple within your relationship with music.
Yeah, I'd say so. To be honest, I haven't been doing it as much over the past few years because we're touring. We're on the road like 200 days a year. So most of my students were like, well, I'm not going to, stick around, understandably. But I will say I'm getting back into teaching a lot more right now, like virtually. Um, and I love teaching. It's a lot of fun. It's rewarding. Yeah. So
When did that aspect kind of come into play for you? Of
the
like,
teaching
oh,
aspect.
yeah, being on the educational side of things.
Yeah, I started teaching when I was in high school, actually. Um, I think my mom's a teacher. So I think for some reason, just enjoyed, I love drumming, and I've had so much fun doing it, and just, it's pretty rewarding and it's a great experience to kind of show somebody else that love, I think. And there's nothing cooler than like that. I have this student Ian who's I think he's a senior in high school now, and I started teaching him when he was like 10 years old, and he's like such a fantastic drummer. Ian Betts is his name, and like his parents are like buddies of mine, and it's just been cool to see him like music is his thing now too. Like he wants to do it for a living, and he has like drum tattoos on his arm. Like the first rudiment I taught him is tattooed on his arm, and like that's so cool. You know, I'm like just knowing that you help somebody like to fall in love with music and drumming, and you know that they're going to continue to do it for the rest of their life. It's like that's awesome. You know, there's nothing better than that. So
Yeah, has being on the other side of the kit, teaching people, kind of given you a satisfaction within music that hadn't been seen or you hadn't felt outside of teaching or until you started teaching?
yeah, I would say so. It's almost like, you know, I mentioned how there's a high that you get after playing a show. I swear, like, it's not quite the same, but, you know, after teaching and like having a good lesson with a student and seeing them excited about the drums, and there's, you know, there's an energy that I get from that too. Like, you leave the lesson, you're like, all right, like, that was great. And, you know, you're excited for them. And so, yeah, it definitely gives me something that just playing doesn't.
Right.
So, yeah.
What has it been like kind of getting into all these different kind of subsets, if you will, of both writing and performing, recording, teaching, all these different aspects? What has that been like to kind of have your hand in all of these different
I
um,
mean, yeah,
levels of it?
it's been great. And honestly, like I've just discovered if I want to make a living doing this, I feel like you need to diversify. You need, you know, so I mean, there are plenty of people who are very successful at just doing one of those things, but I like uh I like getting my hand in a lot of different aspects of the music industry and figuring out like what works for me and what doesn't. And um, because at the end of the day, like, you know, I need to eat, I need to pay for the roof over my head and stuff like that. So I want to make sure I'm going to be able to do that.
I forgot
It's
about that
like
part.
some,
That's important. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes, like I said, you know, you start doing one more than the other. Like I was touring mostly over the past few years, and the teaching kind of took the back seat. Now I'm doing a little bit more teaching. So it's nice that you know, like, oh, I don't have gigs, well, I can do this. I don't, or you know, I don't have students, but it's okay because I'm touring a ton. So you have options, you know.
Right. Do you feel like you've taken away something from every band or project you've been a part of throughout your musical journey that you've then gone on to tack on to your future endeavors with
Totally.
whether
Yeah.
it be bands or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every like big project that I've been involved, it's like, you know, it's a little bit of a learning experience, and you take the good and the bad from both of them and bring it into whatever the next thing you're doing. Um, it's cool, and it's always fun to kind of look back. And the cool thing with music is, you know, you have like material that you put out in that time period as like that's the statement. That's you know, I can look back at albums I made for my trio, or, you know, 20 years from now, I can look back at the GA-20 stuff and be like the Hound Dog Taylor album we did, and there's memories around that, you know, or the Crackdown album. And, you know, there's like these little markings in time that you get when you put records out, which I think is really cool.
Right, the snapshot, if you
Yeah,
will.
exactly. That's a better way to put it. Snapshot.
If
Yeah.
you will, if that's a
If you
big if.
will.
Um, Tim, I really do appreciate you coming on here, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks for
very,
having
very
me.
much.
Yeah.
But before I let you go, I got some promo to do, and you got a lot of stuff in the fire, so we got a lot of
Okay.
stuff to cover here. So GA20's music is streaming everywhere, wherever people get their music, that's where they can find it. You can find the vinyl at coalminerecords.com, and people can buy the merch through the website, which is at ga20band.com. You can find all the digital downloads along with some of the vinyl at the Bandcamp, which is at ga20 bandcamp.com, and everybody can stay up to date with everything that's going on with the band by following them on Instagram at GA20band. The new debut album of Parlor Greens is
Oh
out.
yeah.
Was it July?
July 19th it's coming out.
July 19th, Coal Mine Records, and people can go pre-order it now. And there's a single out right now, West Memphis, right?
Yep, there's two. It's West Memphis, In Green We Dream, and the next single is coming out actually June 18th, which I'm not sure if this will be out yet, but if
Yes,
the
yes,
interview
yeah.
will. Yeah. So we have three out currently
So
then.
3 out. Okay, that's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, and that'll be out via Coal Mine Records.
Yeah.
And everybody can stay up to date with the news of that band by following them on Instagram at Parlor Greens, right? That's where everybody's.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very good. And I promise we're almost done.
That's good.
All right, good, because we got like I think like 9 more things. So yeah,
Yeah, you're right. We got about 10 more hours. All right, good.
you got 10 more hours. Yeah, we're and this is a short one. We're kind of condensing it with that 10.
Yeah.
Um, you can find the music of Tim Carman Trio wherever people get their music, right? You get
Yep.
streaming everywhere.
Yeah, and you can that's on vinyl also at F Spot Records, and then another record I put out through Color Red, based in Denver. So both of those, labels you can get my vinyl onto.
Very cool. And also at the Bandcamp, which is timcarmantrio.bandcamp.com. And Tim's books that we were just discussing, the Phillyism and Haynesism, can both be purchased through hudsonmusic.com. That's the best place that people can get that, right?
Yep, Amazon also, but whatever, either one is fine. Yeah.
And don't or just buy it and then just leave the site. Just don't look at the reviews because we don't really pay attention to those
No, the
anyways.
reviews are good overall. It's just that one. That's
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Leave a review, but don't look at any of the other ones. Just say how good the book is and then just buy it and say how much you love it. That's what
yeah,
the people need to do,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Uh, yes, so through Amazon as well, and people can purchase some more of your merch through your website, which is at timcarmandrums.com.
Yep.
And when you start getting back into the lessons, where's the best place that people can reach out to you if they're interested in
They
taking
can hit
some?
me up through my website on the contact page or send me a message on Instagram at tcarmandrums or Facebook, really whatever. I don't really check the Facebook messages as much, but so Instagram or through my contact page on my website.
Perfect. And go follow Tim on Instagram for all that the releases and tours and all the things that he's got going on. And again, that's at T Carmen Drums on Instagram. And do we
Yep.
have anything else to promote, Tim?
I think that's kind of it. Well, anyone listening from Denver, I'm coming out there. I'll see you guys next. Well, I'll be there by the time this comes out, I guess. So,
So yeah, so just come on outside. Is that what you're saying? And just and come hang out.
exactly.
You'll
Yeah,
be
I'm
walking
there.
around.
Yeah, I'll be hanging out.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that you're there, Tim, and I do appreciate you being here right now. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm gonna stop recording this. I'll talk to you in a minute, okay?
Okay, cool.
All right. Thank you, sir.